Okay, so we are on what, 46, 46?
What about 2.53?
53. Okay.
We discussed Krishna is not influenced by mode of material nature. Person in Krishna consciousness transcends the limits of Shabda Brahma.
What did you say?
Last time we were discussing very much on this last line. Person in Krishna consciousness transcends the limit of Shabda Brahma, or the range of Vedas and Upanishads.
Yeah, because Vedas are written, they can also be spoken, so all that is within the material world. So it says here, the persons in Krishna consciousness transcend the limit of Sabda Brahma, or the range of the Vedas and Upanishads. So the Vedas and Upanishads can get you to Brahman realization. But without being fully engaged in devotional service and under the constant, let's say, tutelage of a pure devotee gurus, Shiksha Diksha gurus, you cannot progress past it. It's only with that, their help, that you can go past the Brahman realization to Paramatma and of course to Lord Krishna and in Goloka. So that's basically what that means. That Krishna consciousness, persons in Krishna consciousness transcend the limit of Sabda Brahma, or the range of the Vedas and the Upanishads. Okay, so now we're in text 53. Shruti vipratipanate,
Shruti Vipratipanate
yadastasyati nischala,
Yada Sthatyati Nischala
samada vachala buddhis,
Samadha Vachala Buddhista
tadayukam avapsyasi.
Yogam Avapsasi
Shruti vipratipanate,
Shruti Vipratipanade
Shruti vipratipanate,
Shruti Vipratipanate
yadastasyati nischala,
Yada Sthatyati Nischala
samada vachala buddhis,
Samadha Vachala Buddhis
tadayukam avapsyasi.
Tada Yogam Avapsasi
Shruti vipratipanate,
Shruti Vipratipanate
yadastasyati nischala,
Yada Sthatyati Nischala
samada vachala buddhis,
Samadha Vachala Buddhis
tada yogam avapsyasi.
Tada Yogam Avapyasi
Okay, you can share this one.
Shruti Vipratipanate
Shruti vipratipanate,
Yada Sthayati Nischala
stasyati.
Sthasyati It's like tongue twister.
Stasyati.
Yeah.
Stasyati.
Yada
Stasyati.
Sthasyati
Yada stasyati nischala.
Yada Sthasyati Nischala
Yeah.
Samadha Vachala Buddhista
Samada vachala buddhis,
Tata Yogam Avapyasi
tada yogam avapsyasi.
Tada Yogam Avapyasi
Avapsyasi.
Avapasyasi
Avapsyas. I'm sorry, I got me going. Avapsyasi.
Avapsyasi
Shruti of Vedic revelation.
Vedic revelation,
Pripatipana,
Vipatti Pranam,
without being influenced by the fruitive results.
without being influenced by fruitive results.
Te,
Te,
your,
your,
yada,
yada,
when,
when,
stasyati,
stasis,
remains,
remains,
nischala,
nischala,
unmoved,
unmoved,
samado,
samadho,
in transcendental consciousness,
in transcendental consciousness,
or Krishna consciousness,
or Krishna consciousness,
achala,
achala,
unflinching,
unflinching,
buddhi,
buddhi,
intelligence,
intelligence,
tada,
tada,
at that time,
at that time,
yogam,
yoga,
self-realization,
self-realization,
avapsyasi,
vaps, yasi,
you will achieve.
you will achieve.
Translation. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. Please repeat. When your mind
When your mind
is no longer disturbed
is no longer disturbed
by the flowery language
by the flowery language
of the Vedas,
of the Vedas,
and when it remains fixed
and when it remains fixed
in the trance of self-realization,
in the trance of self-realization,
then you will have attained
then you will have attained
the divine consciousness.
the divine consciousness.
Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. To say that one is in samadhi is to say that one has fully realized Krishna consciousness. That is, one in full samadhi has realized Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna, and that one's own business, and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. A Krishna conscious person or unflinching devotee of the Lord should not be disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, nor be engaged in fruitive activities for promotion to the heavenly kingdom. In Krishna consciousness, one comes directly in communion with Krishna, and thus all directions from Krishna may be understood in that transcendental state. One is sure to achieve results by such activities and attain conclusive knowledge. One has only to carry out the orders of Krishna or his representative, the spiritual master. So, it's a pretty clear purport and verse. That is, that okay, so the highest perfection is self-realization. Okay, it's an important point. The highest perception of self-realization, or perfection of self-realization, is to understand that one is eternally servitor of Krishna, and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. This is a very important sentence. 2nd chapter, 53rd verse. So, this should be a signal to us of what we're aiming for through studying the Bhagavad Gita. This is the goal. The highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna. So that establishes who we are eternally. We're the servant of Krishna. And that one's only business is to discharge one's duties. Notice the word duties. Duties means things that you must do. You cannot say no to. Discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. So, there's a very interesting parallel statement. says. Let's look at 3rd chapter, 30th verse. It says, that
9:7.
everyone according to his quality and position has a particular type of work to discharge, and all such duties may be discharged in Krishna consciousness as described above. That will lead one to the path of liberation. This is the last line, the last two lines of the purport to 330.
330 or 338?
330.
330.
I'm sorry, 330. Yeah, 330. And also, second, it's the 10th chapter where Prabhupada says, there's a statement where it says that everything depends on the strict execution of devotional service. Okay, so if we look at the 10th chapter, 11th verse. So it says, in the end of the first paragraph, it says, the only qualification is that one carry out devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. And then, in the last paragraph, that purport, middle of that paragraph, it says, the pure devotee does not have to worry about the material necessities of life. He need not be anxious, because when he removes the darkness from his heart, everything is provided automatically by the Supreme Lord, who is pleased by the loving devotional service of the devotee. This is the essence of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. By studying Bhagavad Gita, one can become a soul completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord and engage himself in pure devotional service. As the Lord takes charge, one becomes completely free from all kinds of materialistic endeavors. So here we see the same point being made. That is, the highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna, and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. There's another place where he says, let's see, I'll have to find that another time. Let me just give it a quick try. Okay. Let's take a look at the 5th chapter, last verse, and near the end of the purport, it says, everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which helps one control the senses in every respect and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above-mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage, or Brahma Nirvana. So, again, everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness. And then here it said that the highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally servitor of Krishna, and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. So here we have this repeated many times in the Bhagavad Gita. The same point is repeated many times. Everything depends on the execution of practical duties in Krishna consciousness. The highest perfection of self-realization, understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna, and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. You see? Many times he's saying the same thing. So, what are our duties in Krishna consciousness? Well, Prabhupada gave them to us. You take rest early, you wake up early, chant your rounds, come to Mangala Arati, Tulsi Puja, the opening of the deities, class, Guru Puja, right? All these things are duties that we should do every day. If you can't do it in the temple, you do it at home, but you should do it every day. When you follow these duties, then you become Krishna conscious. Everything depends on one's practical performance of Krishna conscious duties. Okay. So this is the highest perfection of self-realization. Any questions about this verse? And then it says, one has only to carry out the orders of Krishna or his representative, the spiritual master. Then another important point here is, in Krishna consciousness, one comes directly into communion with Krishna. And thus, all directions from Krishna may be understood in that transcendental state. So communion means that you're connected to Krishna. So you don't get connected to Krishna through Mayavad philosophy. You don't get connected to Krishna if you think you are God at some point. Right? But you get connected to Krishna through Krishna consciousness. Why? Because you become convinced that your real identity is that you are the eternal servitor of Krishna. And the highest perfection is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. So this is a major theme throughout the whole Bhagavad Gita. And we can see he's almost repeating the same points over and over again in different chapters. Okay, so we'll go on to text 54. Now we have a shift. Now Arjuna wants to know how you can recognize if a person is transcendentally situated. And this is necessary to know, because if you're going to choose a spiritual master, you can't choose a person who is materially attached or still under the influence, strong influence of the modes of material nature. So Arjuna Uvacha, Stita Pragyasya Bhasa Samadhi Stasya Keshava Stitadi Kim Prabhaseta Kimasita Vrajeta Kim. So Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Who's going to read the purport?
Purport.
As there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly, one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a deceased man has his symptoms by which he is known as deceased, or a learned man has his symptoms, so a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks, but as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow, as stated below.
So if you know someone who always speaks nonsense, you know anyone who always speaks nonsense?
Of course.
So that person is definitely not a guru.
I call my teachers kangaroo in my mind because they're not gurus. They're the ones talking nonsense.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Even kangaroo is too high of a qualification for them. You have to talk more about a worm or a cockroach, then that's their level. So this is important, and now we should learn a lesson from this. That you can tell the value of a person by the way they speak. So if they're speaking nonsense, even though they're using big words, but it's all nonsense, then you know that they're not at all Krishna conscious. Because speech is the most important quality of any man, of any person. So if you want to be a person of quality, then you have to learn how to speak correctly. How do we speak? Well, we should only speak truthfully. It should be pleasing and uplifting. It should be based on shastric evidence. No speculation. No, I stink, meaning I think. It should only be so-and-so. Prabhupada says this, and Krishnadas Kaviraj says this, Krishna says this, it's said by Narada Muni this. So that means you are speaking properly. But if we just say anything, let's look at 17:15. Chapter 17, verse 15. Anudvega karambhakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyaya yasanam chaiva vanmayam tapavichyate. So if we speak, the austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. So who's going to read the purport?
One should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. Of course, when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the instruction of his students. But such a teacher should not speak to those who are not his students if he will agitate their minds. This is penance as far as talking is concerned. Besides that, one should not talk nonsense. The process of speaking in spiritual
You should
circle.
read this to your teachers. You should not talk nonsense. What is this nonsense? We come from monkeys. It was a big bang. Yeah. You can be any gender you want. It's all nonsense. It's all crazy talk. Crazy people. Go ahead.
The process of speaking in spiritual circle is to say something upheld by the scriptures. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying.
Yeah, yes. That's the proof that what you're saying is bona fide. You can back it up with scriptural authority. Go ahead.
At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to the ear. By such discussions, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society. There is limitless stock of Vedic literature, and one should study this. This is called penance of speech.
Okay. So there's an art of speaking, right? It should be beneficial, it should be truthful, it should be uplifting, okay? It should be scripturally valid. Satyam Priya Hitam Vakyam Chaya Swadhyaya Abhyasanam Chaiva. So this Satyam is truthful, Priya is pleasing, Hitam beneficial, and Swadhyaya Abhyasanam should be based on Vedic knowledge. So this is what you should learn in school, how to speak properly, because people are going to judge you by the way you speak. So it's oftentimes when teenagers, they think that by using foul language, they're being cool. But this foul language is foul. That's the whole point. It's foul. It's not clean. It's unclean. And it shows that the mind of the person has become contaminated by the negative imagery with which they speak. So, if you have any kids in your class that use foul language?
Like the cool kids do. The school's big school. Some kids are like good kids. They
Yeah.
do their homework and then they study. And
Yeah.
some kids just are the foul language people.
See? You're not making it up, right?
I'm not making it up.
So,
But I think once they become a teenager, I think the entire crowd just uses that. You know, you hardly find anybody not using it, and it becomes so difficult to.
because they're not being taught. The teacher is not a teacher. He's not even a kangaroo. He's less than a kangaroo. He's a cockroach. They're not teachers. That's the whole point.
Now I understand why in office some of the young people, Indians who have studied there, they will use foul language. I was wondering how these words are coming.
No, even in India when they work, they use foul language. It is not that, they've studied here. Even in India, they constantly use foul language.
Well, they learn it off the American internet. Wait a minute. In Hindi, you don't have people that use foul language?
Yeah.
They
Obviously,
do,
you
but
have
the-
to. Yeah?
Like my mother used to put red pepper in my brother's mouth if she uses any negative word. That's
Your
how.
mother is a teacher. She should get a PhD to teach in the United States. She knows more than all the teachers here. Yeah, because if you use foul language, that means you have a foul brain, and you're not, because people will judge you by the way you speak. And if you use foul language, that means you're a low-class person. So, it's just a fact. So when you meet a person that speaks nicely, is able to quote Shastra to back up their statements, and never agitates a person's mind, they're always uplifting, beneficial. Yeah, you can say this is a good person. Now, are they doing it as a ploy to try and take advantage of you. Well, sometimes there are people like that. They know how to speak real nice. That's just to take advantage. But are they going to use Shastric evidence to back up their statements? No. They just use mellifluous words, sweet-sounding words, but not saying anything that's of any consequence. Oh, you're such a nice person. You are very kind and gracious. But that doesn't mean that much. Now, if you could only buy this product, I'd be really happy. They're just doing it to get you to buy something. Just like at the checkout counter in a Safeway, a lady will look at you right in the face and smile and say, "Did you find everything you were looking for? Is there any way I can help you?" You say, "Oh my God." Speaking like my own relative, But, one time, there was one lady like that. One time I saw her walking down the street, so I was expecting to say hello to her. She just walked past me. She just ignored me. Right? In other words, they're being paid. They're told you have to say this to every person that comes to your cash register. Were you able to find everything you're looking for? Is there any way I can help you? It's like a robot. They don't really mean it. Okay. So the immediate symptom of a Krishna consciousness man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow as stated below. So now, the first and foremost symptom by which you can see if a person is of good character is the way they speak. And it says here, Stita pragya sikha bhasa. So this bhasa means language. And it says, Kim prabhaseta. How does he speak? What language does he use? So if he uses foul language, then you know that they're not situated at all in Krishna consciousness, or any. They don't have really any good qualities because they would not use foul language if they did. Okay. So sometimes you think it's cool to use foul language, right? Like sometimes our own kids, when they don't think any parents are around, they say, "Hey, dude," they'll start talking to each other like that, So, what is this dude? Is it milk or what? So, no, it's a very low class way of talking, very low class. But they think it's cool because they hear everyone in school talking like that. And that's why it's not school. It's the demon's hangout place. Okay, so next, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajahati Yadakamam Sarva Partha Manogatam
Sarvan Partha Manogatam
Atmanyivatmana Tusta
Atmanyevatmana Tushta
Stita Pragyasta Dochyate. Now Krishna is going to answer Arjuna. Arjuna said, how does he walk? How does he talk? How does he sit? What language does he use? So Krishna says, the Supreme Personality Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction. Yes?
Where are we?
We are in the second chapter, 55th verse. Second chapter, 55th verse.
Did you do it?
You want to help
No.
him?
It's on page 122.
Second chapter, 55th. Okay. O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction. And when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So a key word, key phrase here, satisfaction in the self alone. You know anyone who finds satisfaction in the self alone? Well, one symptom of a person who's satisfied in the self alone would be they hardly ever use the cell phone. They're satisfied by meditating on Krishna in their heart and their mind. They don't need to use the cell phone that much.
In my office, one person lost his phone.
Oh my God.
4 days back.
Oh my God. He must have had a nervous breakdown.
No, but this is an exception. And he hasn't bought a new phone and he's saying, I don't care, it's okay.
Oh, good.
So it's like very surprising to a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that? Like, people are asking.
Yeah, they're all addicted.
Yeah.
So he said he doesn't want it.
I mean, he doesn't know how to buy a new one. It's okay. I'm not so much keen.
He's not missing it.
Yeah.
Good. Is he married?
Yeah. So then he told, like, he went for some meditation class where 6 a week he had to spend time alone without
Vipassana.
without talking to anyone.
Yeah.
And then so that made him
Detached.
detached.
Is he Indian guy?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so these different varieties of desire for sense gratification are due to mental concoction. What does that mean, mental concoction? You know, Arush? No. You know what mental concoction is? You know what a concoction is?
You make up something.
Yes. Yeah. A concoction is something that you concoct, which means you make it up. So we make up a lot of things in our mind, right? Every day, in fact, we make something up in our mind that we would like to do or we like to see. So there's these varieties of sense gratification arise from mental concoction. But when the mind is purified, the same person finds satisfaction in the self alone. Then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So satisfaction in self alone means you don't need anything outside of yourself to be happy. You're at peace with yourself because you know your relationship with Krishna and you're acting in that relationship. So you really don't need anything else in your life. So one example would be Prabhupada. He was taking tremendous risk coming to the United States alone at his age. He was 70 years old. But he did it. And then he was going in very dangerous places and hanging out or, trying to preach to people who were like basically wild people. But and he didn't need a lot of things. He just had a few little things that he carried in his suitcase. That was it. But yet, look at all he did. And he did it basically alone in the beginning. He was alone. He didn't have any disciples, didn't have any money. But he had that satisfaction in himself alone. Because he had his relationship with his guru and with Krishna. And he had the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So he had his own, cooking utensil. And he had some grains, and he was cooking for himself. I mean, he was self-sufficient. He had been living as a sannyasi for at least 11 years before he came to the United States. So he learned to live very simply. He hardly had any money at all in India, let alone when he came to the United States. In fact, you have his diary in which every day he writes down how much money he collected. It's usually like $1.25, $1.80, 90 cents. It's all written down. They have his diary, and he was, he might maybe sell one of his books, or he might have gotten a few donations, but there was like less than $10, less than sometimes $2 every day, and somehow or other he was existing. And he was keeping a very strict diary, and he was writing down what happened that day, and he was writing down his budget for that day. He got in $2, he spent 85 cents. Can you believe that?
But there's nothing that's 85 cents that you can buy.
Well, we're talking about 1970. Yeah. But even 1970, you can't buy a lot for 85 cents. But that's all he could spend. Yes.
Where would he stay?
Well, he rented. At first, he was staying at this yoga center, Dr. Mishra's yoga center, for free. But then he realized he was getting nowhere because Dr. Mishra was always trying to control him. So, and Mishra was himself a Mayavadi. So, and Prabhupada was cooking for him. And he was letting him stay in his ashram. But he wouldn't let him speak too much. He would let him speak a little bit, but not too much. So then Prabhupada realized he had to get away from Dr. Mishra. So he took a chance and he rented a room. And eventually opened up a small temple. And that's how it started. Okay, so this varieties of sense desire, varieties of desire for sense gratification arise from mental concoction. So that's what's in the mind of most people. They're always imagining and concocting different types of desires for sense gratification. That's the materialist mind. And the devotee's mind is, when the mind is purified, he finds satisfaction in the self alone. Well, because he's satisfied just by virtue of devotional service and his relationship with Krishna and Guru. So he doesn't really need anything else. So that's called pure transcendental consciousness. So we're not at that point. We're still concocting different types of desires for sense gratification. But if you know what the goal is, then you can work toward the goal and stop your mind from concocting desires for sense gratification and replace them with desires to please Krishna. Okay, so who's going to read the purport? Okay. The Bhagavatam.
The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who's fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendentally situated has no good qualifications, because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said here that one has to give up all kinds of sense desires manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord.
Yeah, so this is the problem. People are not quite sure who they are. What is their real identity? And as long as they're not sure, like some people say, "Oh, I know who I am. I'm a baseball player." Well, that's not really who you are. You know, of course, that's what that person is doing, but that's not who he is. See? So as long as we do not know who we are, we're never satisfied with ourselves or within ourselves. So here it says, the highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Now, that's realization of who you are. Because I am a baseball player, you're not going to do that the rest of your life. You'll do that up to a certain point, then you'll give it up because you get too old or whatever. So that's not who you are. Who you are is what you will do eternally, and that is serve Krishna. So once you know that, then you're able to be satisfied by virtue of the service you're rendering to Krishna. And you're no longer attracted to the flowery language of the Vedas. What does it mean? What is it meant by the flowery language of the Vedas? That was the verse we're studying today, verse 53. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in a trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So, what is the flowery language of the Vedas? Anybody?
Karma Kand.
Yes.
Where we do some austerity in Karma Kand, where we do some austerity, some yajnas, and in return we expect some material benefits.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So we already studied that verse. Ya imam pushpitam cham pravadanti avipaschitaha. This is verse number, second chapter, verse number 42 and 43. Pravadanti avipasya vedavadarata parta nanyat astiti vadina. Karmatmana swarga para janma karma phala pradam. Kriya visesha bahulam bhogaisvaya pratim prapti. So, second chapter, 42nd and 43rd verse. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery language, or the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So, who's going to read this purport? Krishna, go ahead. You read it.
People in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance, they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the Karma Kanda portions of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially the Jyotis Toma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to higher heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices, and men with a poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness.
Determined, not
Oh,
determined.
determined. Sorry,
Determined is not English.
determined. As fools are attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the result of such attractions, unenlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense of enjoyment thereof.
And the sense enjoyment thereof.
Yeah, the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, it is said, Aparma Somam Amrita
Abuma,
Abhuma and
Akshayam,
Akshayam
Havai,
Havai Chaturmasya Yajna Sukratam
Yajna,
Yajna
Sukritam, Bhavati.
Bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances are become eligible to drink the Soma Rasa beverages to become immortal and happy forever. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have Soma Rasa to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratifications. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual,
Addicted to sense gratification. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandana Kanana, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women and having a profuse supply of Somarasa wine. Such bodily happiness is considered certainly sensual. Therefore, there are those who are purely attached to such material, temporary happiness as lords of the material world.
Yeah, so these is a flowery language of the Vedas. Ya idam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipashchita. So pushpitam means flowering, vacham means words. So it's pushpitam vacham. So people with a poor fund of knowledge, avipashchitaha, the people who are pretending to be followers of the Vedas, they actually only want sense gratification. They desire sense gratification. And they're aiming to go to the heavenly planets by doing all these yagyas and pujas and things. And why? Because they want a good birth, they want to have good results for sense gratification. They perform pompous ceremonies, and they want various types of sense enjoyment, and they want riches. So they think that the goal of life is progressing toward that. They're attracted by the flowery language of the Vedas. So, you have to be careful about the Vedas. If you're not instructed properly, you'll think that the goal is attaining these material objectives. Okay.
One question.
Yeah.
So the people actually, like I have seen many people in India specifically.
Where? In the U.S.?
Even in US actually, yeah. So they are like, in general, they try to be nice, don't do anything bad to others, just don't say lie, don't talk lie, and don't try to trouble anybody basically. But they're not necessarily worshipping any god, or maybe we're not necessarily hearing them that they are doing all this to achieve something. So, materialistic benefit. So, are they like belong to the same category, or they are kind of innocent? Or are they different than?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Well, they usually don't believe in organized religions. Their religion is not doing any harm to anyone and following the rules in order to, have a peaceful life. So they have. It looks like they have some good qualities. At least they try to be decent people. And if there's some tragedy, they'll help others. So, such people are, those qualities look good, but they're not genuinely good. Right? But because they're a little bit respectful, it's possible for them, if they meet the right devotees who are like expert in cultivating, it's possible that they could become devotees because they're trying to live more or less in the mode of goodness. Right? It's sort of figured out life is easier if you follow the mode of goodness. You don't cause trouble, and then you don't get trouble. Right?
And then, so what about the kind of charity they do?
Yeah.
Like people who run NGOs and things like that.
Yeah.
Is that kind of...
well, that's all charity for the body.
That doesn't come under the right kind of charity then?
It's bodily, like Bill Gates Foundation.
Yes.
They want to solve, AIDS. They want to solve malaria.
Yeah.
They want to have clean water for people in poor countries. They want to have more opportunities for women. Right? Yeah, so these are all compassion for the body activities. And I'm not criticizing it. At least they're using their money for something that may be considered useful or helpful to poor people and so forth. But it's not spiritual at all because it's just for the body. Right? You can help people. It may make it a little easier for them in this lifetime, but they still have not solved the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease.
They're just building good karma.
Yeah, how did Bill Gates get to be so rich? Obviously, he did many good things in his previous life, right? And he's trying to do more good things now. Maybe take birth on heavenly planets, right? Maybe. But it doesn't solve the problem. It's still subject to birth, death, old age. Like, look at his friend, Paul Allen, right? He died. I think he was only 66 years old. Well, only, but he was 66 years old. He died.
That's very low for American average.
Well, it's not very low, but it's not like 36. But you can't say he didn't have a full life. But he could have done more things. I don't know if he expected to die because he was going full blast, making money still and doing progressive projects. Right? He bought a building for $130 million for the homeless, but only like 90 families. So, they are trying to do something good for humanity with all the money they have, because they know it's actually sinful to have so much money. But you see, these are not really spiritual persons. Don't think it's spiritual doing all those things. It's in the mode of goodness. It's still under the influence of the modes. And they still have a mixed bag of good and bad karma. Paul Allen dies of cancer, right? That means there's some bad karma, right? So I would not, the only thing I'm saying is, you meet a person who's, let's say, generally in the mode of goodness, they have a possibility of understanding something about Krishna consciousness, if they meet the right person. If they meet the wrong person who tries to explain Krishna consciousness to them, then they'll become convinced that they never want to be Krishna conscious. So you have to be careful how you preach to such people, because they're very sharp. They have a sharp mind. They can tell if someone is a imposter. But if they meet a real expert in Krishna consciousness, they may become Krishna conscious, because they're already doing things that are more or less in the mode of goodness. They have principles that they follow. They have some self-discipline. But they also have a mind full that's concocting many material desires, right? And through mental concoctions, they're concocting all these ideas. How to make more money, how to spend it, or like this or like that. So they haven't stopped this. What do you call that? Mana. The actual term is Prajahati. You have to come on. Sarvam Partha Manogatan. That is, they are Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan. They have different varieties of desire for sense gratification due to mental concoction. They haven't given that up yet. And you can tell by how they're spending their money, what projects, what new businesses they're investing in, and so forth. They haven't given up this mental concoction and different varieties of sense gratification. So, such people have not really understood who they are yet. But they've understood something about how the material energy works and how you get more positive results by being more in the mode of goodness. Like, for example, I have a friend of mine. He's a pretty wealthy guy, and one time he got in trouble with the IRS. Not that he was trying to cheat them, but he made a mistake. Huh? IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. That's the people that collect taxes. So they gave him a hard time. So he learned his lesson.
What did he do?
Huh?
What did he do?
Now, he made a mistake on his tax return. He tried to get some deduction, but actually it was not a proper deduction. So they gave him a hard time. So after that, he was extremely careful about paying his taxes on time and not trying to take any special benefits that are, let's say, creative. He became very conservative, and so he realized, it's better to follow the rules than to try and fiddle the rules. There's following and there's fiddling. Right? You know what fiddling means?
No.
Well, you know what a fiddle is?
No.
It's a violin. It's a slang word for the violin. So when you go like this, like that, right? So fiddling means you're playing games. You're trying to get away with something by being too clever. So he learned his lesson. And many people, they're a little more educated, they learn their lesson in life. You can't really get away with being too creative about trying to make more money or cheating a little bit here, cheating a little bit. It finally catches up to you. So they're very careful about, their taxes and speaking to people, because they realize, previously I said this word and people got upset, so I have to be very careful now. Speak this way, be very careful. But that's so that their sense gratification is not disturbed. Not that they want to, become a pure devotee. They just want to have success in life, and they realize you get more success in the mode of goodness than in the mode of passion and ignorance. Okay. All right. So this is a very important purport also. Now, here it says, artificially such sense desires cannot be stopped. And that's true. The mind is always being inundated with more and more desires for sense gratification. And there's a verse at the end of the second chapter, Apuryamanam achalam pratistam, samudra apa pravisanti sarve, yadvat, tadvat kamayam pravisanti sarve, sasantim apnati nakama kami. So let's look at the second chapter, 70th verse. Who's going to read? Arushi, you going to read?
What? Okay.
70.
Second chapter, 70th verse. 2.70. Go ahead.
A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
So, here it's saying that normally there's an incessant flow of material desires coming into the mind. Just like rivers and emptying into the ocean. But the ocean, even though so many rivers in the world are coming into the ocean with huge amount of water, generally always remains stable. Right? So, a person who has this should not be disturbed by this incessant flow of material desires. Then they can achieve peace. But not the person who tries to satisfy all these desires. They'll never be peaceful. Okay, so do you have any example of that? Anyone can give an example of their personal life. Well, you gave an example, right? The man that lost his watch. His phone, I'm sorry. He lost his phone. And he said, that's okay. I can get along with that. And everyone was surprised, right? Everyone was shocked. How can he say that? We can't live even 5 minutes without our phone. And he lost his phone. He doesn't want to buy another phone. I said, that's all right. I won't need it. So, that's one seemingly irresistible desire, or a desirable thing, that he decided that he can get along without. Here's an example. Now, does that make him more peaceful?
Yes. Yes. Maybe. Yes.
Well, this,
Less anxious, maybe, about certain things.
Certain things maybe might be playing in the back of his mind.
well, let's put it like, I mean, you can go both ways. Let's say, yeah, he's more peaceful now. He doesn't have to worry about, gets a ping, and then he gets some updates, and then he finds out the latest thing Trump said. He's not concerned about it anymore, right? His life is not impacted by eliminating all that. On the other hand, let's say, his wife, some thief comes into his house when he's at work. His wife is hiding in a closet with the door locked, and she calls him up and says, but he doesn't answer because he doesn't have a phone. And then later on he finds out his wife died, and he looks at her phone and she dialed him 10 times. So then he would say, oh my God, I should have had the phone, and then I could have done something. Of course, his wife might probably call the police also, but she called him 10 times at first, right? But the thief found her in the closet and killed her. So now he feels very guilty. Why did I give that phone up? See, that could happen, something like that. Hopefully it doesn't, but it's possible. So it can go both ways, right? Because he cut off that channel of communication with his wife. So sometimes a phone comes in handy because, it can be a channel of communication in emergencies. But those are rare things. So he can go for 10 to 15 years without any mishap because he doesn't have the phone. And he can live much more peacefully. So here it says that it's better, you can only achieve peace if you do not get disturbed by the incessant flow of desires into the mind. And do not try to satisfy all those desires. So let's read the purport. Okay, you want to read it?
Purport. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water, but the ocean remains the same, steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limits of its brink.
Its brink.
Its brink.
That means it's shoreline.
So, that is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the river that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna conscious man. One who has lost all inclination for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady, like the ocean, and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires, even up to the limit of the liberation, what to speak of material success, attain peace.
Never attain peace.
Yeah.
Did you say never?
Yeah. Never attain peace. The fruitive worker.
Fruitive.
The fruitive worker.
Fruitive is not a word in the English language. The word that Prabhupada made up.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. If you look it up in the dictionary, you won't find it.
Fruitive?
Yeah. You have a dictionary?
The fruitive worker, the
You have a cell phone?
salvationist.
I have a dictionary.
Where's your
It's for
dictionary?
kids. So I think it'll be there.
It's not gonna be in
Where's your dictionary?
It's upstairs.
Okay, go get it. Let's see if it's in the dictionary.
Oh, it's a dictionary.
Fruitib. It is?
It says enjoying
Possessing.
possessing.
Fruitive?
Yeah.
No.
Fruitive. Yeah.
Let me see. It never used to be in the dictionary.
Maybe it came from database.
No, it's possible. How about? Wait a minute, let's see. Okay, they gave a quote of a writer who used the word, Nancy Hill. Wow, that's amazing. Never used to be in the dictionary. Find out the, see if you can find the history of the word fruitive, how it came into the English language. You could, I guess you could look up the etymology of the word, etymology. You didn't find it? You're not using it very much.
So they'll not find their pencil also that
Yeah.
time. So
Wow. Is your bed upstairs?
Yeah.
Can you find your bed?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Medieval,
Huh?
medieval Latin word. It's,
medieval Latin word origin.
Wow. Okay. I'm wrong. All right. Interesting. Yeah?
It's there. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, go ahead.
The fruitive worker, the salvationist, and the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace.
Okay. So this gives a little more background to the verse we just read. 50, what is it?
But what does it mean that the yogis have material desires in the day? What material desires will they have?
Who? What, say that again?
No, it's written over here, the yogis have some material desires.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what material desires will they have?
They want the yoga cities.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then the Gyanis have material desires. They want liberation. And the karma yogis have material desires. They want to go to Swarga.
Okay. So all these things come under material desires.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's why the karma, jnana, and yogas are actually detrimental for Krishna consciousness. Because
But
you-
then again, building the temple, will it not come under material desires? No, because
it can be if you think the temple is your house. See, like for example, the Goswamis built big temples 500 years ago in Vrindavan, right? But they kept sleeping underneath trees. They didn't sleep in the temple, and they didn't improve their level of life through the temple. They continued eating hardly anything, sleeping maybe half an hour a day, and always preaching and writing and doing things. It didn't change their lifestyle. Right? They continued to live exactly the way they did before as very renounced sannyasis. But some people, they build a big temple and they have their own private jets, and they have a Rolex watch and gold chains, and they have a big room, and they have a gold toilet. And there was this one devotee who was a big guru in ISKCON, and Prabhupada asked him to, he was in Europe, and Prabhupada asked him to manage Vrindavan. So he went to Vrindavan, and then he ordered his gold toilet from Italy to come to Vrindavan. By the time the gold toilet got there, he was thrown out. So, I mean, he had a gold toilet. That's how opulently he was living. It wasn't like solid gold, but part of it was gold. Right? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Right? And he wanted to have his gold toilet in Vrindavan. So they had to send it from Italy to Vrindavan. But before it got to Italy, he was already thrown out by Radharani. out of Vrindavan. And then after that, he was all the way downhill until he finally left ISKCON. But he had a huge zone and many devotees, and he was very, very opulent, and he lost everything. So, you build a temple, but it's not to improve your personal economic position. It's to render service. Better service for you. Instead of having a little house, you have a big temple for Krishna. Right? That means more people can come. And more prasadam can go out, and more preaching can take place. So, that's the purpose. It's not to have a big office, big bedroom, and a gold toilet. Why do you need a gold toilet anyway?
It's the same thing.
It doesn't matter.
There's
You
no
have a gold
difference.
toilet, or you have a ceramic toilet. What's the difference? Or you have no toilet. Okay.
So there's a temple in Vrindavan called Prem Mandir.
Yeah.
So some people go there in Vrindavan, they say, hey, that was the most beautiful temple they've seen. But that temple is only about like exhibition of the Guru who started it probably. Anywhere you go.
Kripalu.
Yeah. You've seen it?
No,
Yeah.
I have not
So
been there.
if you go
Well,
around,
it's near our temple.
yeah,
Okay.
just walkable.
It's on Bhaktivedanta Marg.
So if you go to the temple, it just feels like, okay, you're just looking about this Guru. It's all like in every jhanki, 3D, his figure and a lot of people following him, different leela. It's like about his pastime.
Yeah.
Guru's pastime.
Guru's pastime. Yeah, I mean, that's what it shows up. Like, it's not like, Krishna.
See, Prabhupada was the only guru that came to the West that his name is not associated with the movement.
Yeah.
He called it Krishna Consciousness Movement, or Hare Krishna Movement. So people don't say Bhaktivedanta Swami, but you go to that temple, Prem Temple, it's Kripalu Maharaj Temple, right? You go to this other ashram, it's Muktananda Maharaj's temple, right? They don't say the name of the deity, they say the name of the guru, right? Or you Ma Amritamayi's ashram, right? Or it's Nityananda ashram, or it's and then you go to the temple and Nityananda's picture is like over the altar, above the altar, right? Or it's like you go to Ramana Maharishi, right? If that's the name of the movement.
The name of the person, Guru.
Yeah, the name of it.
That's
So that's what I realized. That was the difference between Prabhupada and all these other gurus. All the other gurus' movements is named after them. Prabhupada's movement is named after Krishna. It's known as the Hare Krishna movement. So he did not put himself above Krishna. He was a servant of Krishna. And all the other gurus, it's like you hear about Aurobindo. Right. Or you hear about Krishnamurti. Yeah.
Then how are those people even called gurus if they just name themselves after the temple?
Well, because people, look, because so many gurus named the movement after themselves, people get to think, well, that's just normal. But it's not. Just like, you have the Birla temple, right? They're mostly Radha Krishna temples, but they don't call it Radha Krishna temple, they're called Birla temple, right? So the Birla family is spending a huge amount of money building these temples, but it's basically for their own glorification. Although there's, we have the deities, yeah, but the deities, it's like an ornament. It's not for real. What's real is the Birla name.
Yeah, even when you visit those temples, it's so fake. In the sense, it's more like, as you say, it's more for a decoration purpose or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's interested in any kind of spirituality. People come and they're only interested in posing and clicking pictures.
Right.
So,
The same with the Prem Mandir. It's the same. It's very clean.
Yeah.
It looks so nicely kept. but it just looks like some museum, like an upkept museum. And
No, it
there's
looks
a
like the
little
Taj
tiny-
Mahal.
Yeah.
What's the Taj Mahal? It's not a temple.
Probably they even had like heaters under the tiles.
Where?
Like on the floor.
Where?
Like, in the frame.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, well, by the way, all that marble came from Italy. It's not Indian marble. They spent a huge amount of money. I could tell you things about Kripala, but I'm not going to do it now. You know, but he's a very, anyway, I don't want to say, but they're very clever people. Let's put it like that. Very clever people. But on the outside, it's shiny, and you know, it looks attractive, and they have some nice kirtans and things like that. Well, I mean, the point is, who is more important in that temple? Is it Kripala Maharaj or is it Radha Krishna?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to that temple, only Kripalu Maharaj is important. Actually.
Yeah, see, so you go to Prabhupada's temple, what's important is Radha and Krishna, or Jagannath. Even here, this is, you know, Radha and Madhava. Everyone's focused on them. In fact, most people don't even know about Prabhupada.
Some of the friends, my friends ask, who is that?
Yeah, who's that guy there? What's he doing here?
Actually, yes, Prabhu, he's not. I mean, a lot of people in India also they don't know, and even why should I say? Only after I came to this temple, I know about
Prabhupada.
no, not Prabhupada. I knew about Prabhupada, about Gauranga and Nityananda. I mean, those deities.
Oh, very few people know about Lord Chaitanya. Yeah.
Very. I mean, I told you I just read it in a history book, but I didn't know that he was worshipped as a deity also, because we just know him as somebody who started Bhakti movement in India. That is what we read in history. So we can.
Yeah, but even Prabhupada, not everybody knows about Prabhupada. But they know ISKCON.
Yeah, they know
ISKCON.
ISKCON and they know Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
But they don't know much about it.
So in India, there is misconception that now ISKCON is a foreign entity, and they are taking money from India and taking it up through these temples.
Just the opposite is true, though.
Yeah.
Prabhupada sent the money from America to India to build some of those temples, the first temples.
Even what is it? The
No, they're members of the CIA. That was.
you know, in India they have levels of priests. So the highest priest in India, Shankaracharya. So even he gives interviews saying that ISKCON is not good.
Well, yeah, because
He doesn't like it. Doesn't like ISKCON. And
which Sankaracharya? The one in Kanchipuram, the one in
so
Bhubaneswar.
that I don't know, Prabhu. Maybe this guy is
There are
from
four
North actually.
Sankaracharyas.
This guy is, and he has he has talked to Prabhupada. Said he is his
And met
contemporary.
Prabhupada?
Yeah, he met Prabhupada. So in Vrindavan they have interacted. But he says here ISKCON is not good. That's what he is.
So he's not criticizing Prabhupada, he's criticizing ISKCON, or he's criticizing Prabhupada also?
So he says Prabhupada says this Mayavad is not good, but as per him, even ISKCON is also following Mayavad, and he quoted.
Well, this is Sankaracharya,
Yeah,
and where is he located?
I think one of the north side he speaks Hindi. I think proper Hindi, so I think he's from there.
Okay, so Sankaracharya in North India, I think it is, I'm not sure, but I think it's in the Himalayas.
No, he does not stay in Himalayas.
No,
He
no.
stays in like lavish
Yeah.
ashramas.
Yes.
Where? In Delhi?
No, somewhere over Haridwar and this area.
So there are
But
four.
Prabhu, not all Shankaracharyas they lead very lavish lives. Some of them are very.
There was one, the Sankaracharya in Kanchipuram, the previous one, he lived to be like, he lived to be 102 years old.
Yeah, he's called Mahapariyavan. He was a very
He was a very good, but he was a
He was
devotee.
very good. In fact,
No, no, not in South India.
He quoted one verse called.
He was a devotee.
he was a great devotee, and in
Yeah.
fact,
He had met, when he was a young sannyasi, he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. One of our sannyasis went to see him. He was giving a rare darshan. So he went to see him, and he was told that there's some ISKCON devotees here, so he immediately said, bring them up, I want to meet them. You know, it was a long line, and the devotees were far in the line, but he heard, so he said, bring them up, I want to meet them. Then when they came, he actually sat up to talk to them. Everyone was surprised because he was laying down, he was very old at that time. And he said, when I was a young sannyasi, your guru's guru came to our ashram. He said, we had never met anyone like him. He was the greatest scholar we ever met. And I've heard about your guru and what he's done, spread his movement all over the world. He said, now you please do some Hari Kirtan for me. And they chanted, they did Kirtan. And well, the sannyasi that went to see him, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, he's a good friend of mine. He unfortunately passed away. But he had a disciple with him who didn't want to see him. But he said, no, we should go and see him. The disciple, he's just a Mayavadi. He said, no, we should go and see him. After he met him, the disciple, was next to his guru, and he met him. Then he realized he made a big mistake. He realized he was actually a devotee. Right? So, and then his guru told him that, look, you will find demons amongst ISKCON devotees, and you'll find pure devotees amongst the Mayavadis also. He said, never underestimate people. So that was a lesson for his disciple. But there are four major temples of I guess Shiva. One is Bhubaneswar, one is Kanchipuram, one is, I thought it was Badarikashram, but maybe it's somewhere else in North India. Where is he located in North India?
I don't know his locations, but he is like more towards coming into media, giving interviews, and talking lot of things. So, like I don't think he is following that what Shankaracharya, saying follow his subsequent.
Well, actually, no. Prabhupada explains Shankaracharya is actually a genuine devotee.
Yeah.
He says he's a genuine devotee because, even though he wrote his Sarilat Bhasya, which is like the basis of Mayavadi philosophy in modern times. I mean, there were Mayavadis a long time ago also, but in modern times. But he sort of codified it. But he also wrote many poems and bhajans glorifying Krishna, beautiful poems. And he also said Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda. So he was actually a devotee. But his disciples didn't understand his Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda. They don't talk about that so much. And he had one devotee, his name was Sadananda something. And he really went off the rails with Mayavad philosophy. Even though his guru said, forget about it, just worship Govinda. They downplayed that and they went completely into Mayavad philosophy. So therefore, they've actually deviated from Shankaracharya. They actually deviated.
So he used a verse called Chito Darpanam Marjanam. So he quoted that and he said it really means something that it is supporting Mayavad philosophy. It's not directly not referring to in-person Krishna. It's like impersonal Krishna.
Well, that's what they do. They skew out false meanings by grammatical jugglery. Dukrin Karane. This is in that song by Jagwani. It says, stop this Dukrin Karane. This finding obscure meanings in Sanskrit and changing the actual intention of the Sanskrit to becoming something else.
Are there Mayavad temples?
Yeah, plenty.
Obviously.
You got them in Seattle. Yeah. Yeah. You want to visit one? Okay, we'll stop right there. You want to take rest early? We have our class tomorrow.
Yeah.
Did you do your homework?
I did a really good.
I did a little bit.
I did
I have
like
to do more.
I did the part about the Socratic method, but I didn't quote the 12 points yet.
Okay. It was a good homework.
It's kind of hard.
Well, we'll go over it tomorrow. But we want to take rest early so we're on time tomorrow. Haribol.
You can have my book. Does it have my notebook in it?
So just before
What?
the class, I was doing the homework, but like,
For tomorrow?
yeah. So do you have to list out all the qualities of Krishna and then talk about how God is true based on those? Like the 12 points that you gave us?
Well, no, it's like this. Let's say you're going to meet a Mayavad, right? Or let's say an atheist. And the atheist says, I don't believe in God. So now, you have those 12 points. So, with that as a background, what questions would you ask the Mayavad, the atheist? By which you could prove to him that he actually knows nothing about God.
Oh, so
But now you know something about God. You have those 12 points. So he says there's no God. Right? So what questions can you ask him by which you could show him that he really knows nothing about God? So how can he deny there's God when he doesn't even know what God means? Right? So so this is what Socrates would do. Someone would say, I know what morality is. So then he would ask him some questions. And then the person would finally admit, actually I don't know what it means. And then Socrates says, that's okay. So now let's try and find out together what morality is. That's the Socratic method. He didn't say you're an idiot or anything like that. He would just help the person understand that he doesn't really understand anything about what is morality. So it's the same thing with the atheist. Atheist doesn't believe there's God, but he doesn't even know what it means to be God.
So basically you ask questions like, who is the origin of all things? And they're like,
Yeah, so he would say, there was a Big Bang, or there was Darwin's theory. So then, so you have to intelligently ask questions. And eventually the person will admit, actually I don't really know. I just don't believe there's God. I said, well, that's okay. Well, maybe if you learn a little bit more about what it